Ethan had just turned 17. He was polite, respectful, and often distant. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, but Emily could see the walls he had built around himself. She had tried to reach out, baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies, leaving little notes in his room asking him about school, but he had a way of keeping her at arm's length. And yet she couldn't help but feel drawn to him, not in any way that crossed boundaries, but in a way that made her want to protect him, understand him, and be someone he could truly rely on. Emily sighed, placing her coffee cup on the counter. She felt a familiar tug in her chest, a longing she hadn't fully named. It was the kind of loneliness that crept up even in the midst of family, the ache of wanting connection, of wanting someone to see you completely and accept you anyway. She had imagined that marrying David would fill that void. But some spaces in the heart couldn't be filled by love alone. They needed understanding, trust, and something unspoken that could only grow slowly over time. It was late afternoon when she heard the soft shuffle of footsteps behind her. Ethan had come home from school as usual, without announcement. Emily turned, giving him her warmest smile. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, keeping her tone light, casual, hoping to invite a connection without pressure. He shrugged, his gaze briefly meeting hers before darting away. "It was fine," he said softly, placing his backpack on the floor. There was a pause, the kind of silence that carried more weight than words could. Emily wanted to reach out, to say something meaningful, but instead, she let him be. Some things she had learned couldn't be rushed. Minutes later, she found him in the kitchen, quietly humming a tune she didn't recognize. He was attempting to make scrambled eggs, the contents of the pan wobbling slightly as he stirred. Emily watched him for a moment, noting the care with which he moved, the focus in his eyes. It was a small, ordinary scene, but to her it felt intimate, almost sacred. There was a vulnerability in him, a quiet hopefulness that seemed hidden beneath layers of teenage uncertainty. "Need a hand?" she asked softly, stepping closer. Ethan glanced at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Then, with a small nod, he accepted her help. Together, they carefully scrambled the eggs, their hands brushing once or twice. Emily felt her heart lurch slightly. A strange mix of protectiveness, admiration, and a deeper curiosity she didn't yet understand. She quickly reminded herself to breathe. These were just ordinary moments, nothing more, and yet they felt extraordinary. When breakfast was finally ready, they sat together at the small kitchen table. Ethan ate quietly and Emily watched him, wondering what went through his mind. He wasn't just polite or distant anymore. There was a spark in his eyes today, something that had been missing. For the first time, he looked at her not as a stranger or a parent's new partner, but with a faint trace of genuine warmth. David called from the living room, reminding them about the upcoming family gathering that evening. Emily nodded, smiling faintly. These gatherings were always a mix of excitement and anxiety. She wanted to be accepted, to be seen, and to somehow fit into a family that was already complete in its own way. But today something felt different. Today there was a hint of possibility, a sense that bridges could be built slowly but surely between her and Ethan. As she cleared the dishes, Emily couldn't shake the thought that had been forming in her mind all afternoon. Life had a way of surprising people, of bringing connections that were unexpected and powerful. She didn't know where this growing closeness with Ethan would lead, but she felt the pull of something deep, tender, and quietly transformative. The rain continued to fall outside, steady and persistent, as if marking the beginning of something new. Emily paused, looking out the window once more, her reflection merging with the raindrops. There was hope in that reflection, fragile but real. And somewhere in the quiet rhythm of ordinary moments, the first threads of change were weaving themselves into her life. A change that would test her heart, her patience, and the very meaning of family. Cliffhanger. Emily noticed Ethan looking up from the table, his eyes lingering on her in a way that made her chest tighten. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition that life was about to shift, and Emily had always been careful about how she approached Ethan. He wasn't just David's son. He was a young man who had grown up with his own experiences, his own joys and disappointments. She remembered her first day in their house, the way Ethan had watched her from the corner of the living room, polite but guarded, as if he were measuring every word, every gesture. At first she had felt frustrated. She had tried to reach out with jokes, small gifts, and thoughtful gestures, yet he had remained distant, a shadow in the background of their newly formed family. But Emily had learned that walls weren't built overnight, and neither were bridges. Trust took time, patience, and a willingness to understand without judgment. One rainy afternoon, Emily had discovered a small detail that changed everything. She had been sorting through boxes in the attic, looking for decorations for the upcoming family gathering, when she stumbled upon an old scrapbook. It belonged to Ethan. Pages of childhood photos, school projects, and handwritten notes told stories of who he had been, who he was, and the small joys that had shaped him. She found a photo of him at his 7th birthday party, grinning with chocolate frosting smeared across his cheeks, surrounded by balloons and friends. Another page showed him winning a school art contest, a shy smile lighting up his face. Emily felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of closeness she hadn't experienced before. She realized that beneath the polite distance, beneath the walls he had built, there was a boy who had always yearned for connection. Later, when she gently mentioned the scrapbook to him, Ethan had smiled, a quiet, vulnerable smile that Emily would remember for a long time. He told her stories of his childhood, moments he hadn't shared with anyone else. He spoke of his first best friend, the dog he had loved and lost, and the times he had felt invisible at school. Emily listened, captivated, not just by the stories, but by the trust he was placing in her. She felt honored, realizing that these were the threads that would slowly weave them together. Their connection grew in small, unexpected ways. Sometimes it was sharing a laugh over a clumsy attempt at cooking. Other times it was a silent understanding, a nod or glance that said more than words ever could. Emily remembered one chilly evening, when she found Ethan sitting on the porch swing with a notebook in his hands. He was drawing, sketching ideas for a story he had been working on, and for a long while he didn't even notice her watching. "I didn't know you liked to draw," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, eyes wide for a moment, and then smiled. "I do. Just not many people know." Emily sat beside him, careful to give him space yet close enough to offer quiet encouragement. They talked about his art, his favorite stories, and dreams he sometimes whispered to himself. In those moments, Emily felt a warmth in her chest that wasn't just affection. It was admiration, respect, and a desire to see him thrive. Yet there were moments when the past still held them apart. Ethan had memories of feeling overlooked, of being caught in the tension of a changing family dynamic. Emily understood. She could see the cautious way he measured her words, the hesitation in his gestures. She didn't push. She let him come to her in his own time, knowing that the bond they were building needed patience more than anything else. One evening, Emily found herself reflecting on how far they had come. She sat in the living room, watching Ethan quietly read a book on the sofa, the soft lamplight highlighting the gentle curve of his face. There was a calm between them now, a quiet rhythm that had taken weeks to develop. She remembered the early days, how his polite distance had made her ache with longing, how she had wished for even the smallest sign that he trusted her. Now that trust was slowly growing. There were shared smiles, subtle gestures of comfort, and the moments when he allowed himself to be vulnerable. Emily realized that this was what she had been longing for all along. Not grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but the quiet, steady presence of someone opening their heart to her. She also thought about the moments that had tested their bond. The awkward silences, the misread gestures, the unspoken fears. Each challenge had strengthened their connection in its own way, teaching them to navigate emotions with care and sensitivity. Emily felt a sense of pride and hope. They weren't perfect, but the imperfections made their growing closeness feel authentic, tender, and real. As she watched Ethan turn a page in his book, she caught a fleeting glance from him. Their eyes met for a moment, and in that brief exchange, Emily felt the gentle acknowledgement of the bond they were building. A connection rooted in understanding, trust, and the subtle unspoken beauty of shared moments. Cliffhanger. Emily smiled to herself, but a quiet thought lingered in her mind. The past had shaped them, the present was building their connection, and she couldn't help but wonder what the future might hold. Was their bond strong enough to withstand life's next surprise? Or would the unspoken feelings they shared push them toward an unexpected path? The weekend arrived with a warmth that felt almost like a gift. Emily had spent the morning tidying up the house, the sunlight spilling through the windows and catching the dust motes in a golden glow. For once, the quiet comfort of home didn't feel lonely. Instead, it held a sense of possibility. A gentle reminder that life could surprise you when you least expected it. Ethan came downstairs carrying a stack of books, his brow furrowed as if he had been deep in thought. Emily smiled, noticing the small lines of concentration on his young face. "You've been buried in those all morning," she said softly. "Finding something interesting?" Ethan shrugged but allowed a small smile to form. "Just doing some research for a project. I thought I'd get ahead." Emily watched him move through the kitchen, noticing the way the sunlight highlighted the strands of his hair and the thoughtful crease of his forehead. There was a quiet intensity about him today, a focus that seemed to pull at something deep inside her. She reminded herself to breathe, to stay aware of her own feelings, and to simply enjoy the moment without overthinking it. It was then that fate, or perhaps just a small twist of circumstance, intervened. A loud crash echoed from the garage, startling them both. Emily jumped slightly, and Ethan rushed toward the sound, leaving the stack of books precariously balanced on the counter. She followed him, curiosity and concern mingling in her chest. In the garage, a box of holiday decorations had fallen from a high shelf. Ethan bent down to pick it up, and Emily crouched beside him to help. Their hands brushed as they lifted the heavy box together, and for a brief moment time seemed to slow. There was an unspoken connection in that small, ordinary gesture, a spark of recognition that neither of them could fully explain. "I guess we're a good team," Emily said, laughing softly, trying to shake off the sudden rush of emotion she felt. Ethan glanced at her, his eyes lingering longer than usual. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess we are." It was a simple exchange, but in that simplicity lay a depth neither of them could ignore. Over the past weeks they had built a bond on small moments, shared memories and quiet trust, but now in the present that bond seemed to take on a new weight, a new significance. It was as if the universe had conspired to remind them both that life's connections often arrive unexpectedly, in ways that demand your full attention. Later that afternoon, Emily found herself in the living room, tidying up the stray papers and decorations left from the garage. Ethan appeared beside her, holding a notebook. "Hey," he said hesitantly. "I wanted to show you something I've been working on." Emily smiled, her heart warming. "I'd love to see it." He opened the notebook, revealing pages filled with sketches and short stories. Emily was impressed, not just by his talent, but by the emotions he poured into his work. Each drawing, each line of writing seemed to reveal a side of him she hadn't fully seen before. Thoughtful, sensitive, and deeply expressive. "You're amazing," she said softly, her words carrying the admiration she felt but also a careful tenderness. "I had no idea you felt so strongly about this." Ethan looked at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, followed by something softer, something unspoken. For a moment the world outside seemed to fade, leaving just the two of them in a space that felt intimate in its quiet sincerity. Emily felt a rush of emotion she couldn't name, a mixture of pride, affection, and longing. But it was the kind of longing that comes from wanting to be part of someone's life in the most meaningful way possible. As the day faded into evening, they moved to the porch, sitting side by side in comfortable silence. The sky was painted with the soft colors of sunset, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers from the garden. Emily glanced at Ethan and noticed the subtle changes in him. The way he leaned slightly closer when he felt safe, the way his eyes held a mixture of gratitude and trust. "It's peaceful out here," Ethan said quietly, breaking the silence. Emily nodded, feeling the same calm she sensed in him. "It really is. Sometimes it's nice to just be." They sat together, sharing the quiet, letting the world slow down around them. It was a moment of connection that felt bigger than words, a reminder that life often unfolds in small gestures and shared silences. Emily realized that the bond she and Ethan had built over weeks of effort and understanding had reached a turning point. The trust and care between them had evolved into something deeper. Not romantic in any inappropriate sense, but profoundly meaningful. A relationship that could sustain both of them in ways neither had expected. Cliffhanger. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily noticed Ethan's gaze linger on her just a little longer than usual. Something in that glance tugged at her heart, a reminder that life had a way of testing emotions, of nudging people toward choices they hadn't anticipated. And as she watched him turn to glance at the fading light, she couldn't help but wonder, had their quiet bond just crossed an invisible line, or was it simply evolving into something richer and more enduring? The following week brought a quiet calm to the house, a rare pause in the usual rush of life. Emily found herself noticing small details more than ever, the way Ethan's brow furrowed when he was focused, the soft laugh that escaped him when a joke landed just right, the tiny ways he expressed himself without saying a word. Each observation stirred a warmth in her chest, a quiet, gentle affection that wasn't romantic in any inappropriate sense, but deeply personal and heartfelt. One afternoon, Emily returned home from work to find Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, a notebook open before him and a pencil in hand. He looked up as she entered, his expression hesitant but earnest. "Hey Emily," he said softly, "can I talk to you about something?" Emily's heart quickened slightly, a mix of curiosity and concern. She pulled a chair beside him and sat down. "Of course, Ethan. What's on your mind?" He took a deep breath, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The quiet between them was comfortable, filled with the trust they had slowly built over weeks. Finally, he began to speak. I've felt a little lost since my dad remarried," he admitted. "It's not that I don't like you, I really do. It's just, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to fit into this new family, how to let someone new in without feeling like I was betraying the past." Emily listened, her eyes soft, her hand resting gently on his. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm, "I understand. Change can be hard, and it's okay to feel uncertain. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. I'm here and I want to be someone you can trust, someone who cares about you. Not to replace anything, but to be part of your life in a way that feels right." He nodded, a faint smile forming. "Thanks. That really means a lot." They sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of their conversation settle. Emily realized that this was the kind of connection she had been longing for. Not dramatic or flashy, but honest, patient, and deeply emotional. She felt a rush of gratitude that Ethan trusted her enough to share his feelings, that their bond had grown to a place where vulnerability was safe. Later, they found themselves in the living room, sorting through old photo albums for the family gathering the next day. Emily watched Ethan carefully arrange the photos, his hands steady and precise. Occasionally, he would glance at her, and she caught the faintest spark of recognition in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the connection they shared, the trust they had nurtured. "I didn't realize you kept all of these," Emily said softly, lifting a photo of Ethan at a school performance. "You've always been so thoughtful, even as a kid." He smiled a little wistfully. "I guess I just wanted someone to see me for who I am. Not just the good grades or the awards, but me." Emily's chest tightened. She wanted him to know that she saw him, not just the exterior, not just the achievements, but the heart beneath. And she did. Every laugh, every sigh, every quiet moment had revealed layers of him that she had grown to understand and cherish. As the evening deepened, Emily noticed something subtle in Ethan's behavior. A willingness to linger in her presence, a small smile that carried trust and warmth, a soft laugh shared over trivial things. It wasn't romantic, and it didn't need to be. It was the kind of bond that made a house feel like home, a connection that transcended titles or roles. When David came home that night, he found Emily and Ethan sitting side by side, sorting photos together. He smiled, unaware of the silent depth of their bond. "You two seem to be getting along really well," he said. "I'm glad." Emily smiled back, feeling a quiet reassurance. "We are," she said softly. "It's nice." Later, as Emily prepared for bed, she reflected on the day. The confessions of the heart, the sharing of fears and hopes, had strengthened their connection in ways she hadn't imagined. It was a bond built on honesty, trust, and genuine care. A bond that could carry them through challenges, misunderstandings, and the uncertainties of life. Cliffhanger. Emily felt a gentle tug in her chest as she thought of Ethan, a quiet question lingering in her mind. Could a bond this strong continue to grow without overstepping boundaries? And as she closed her eyes that night, she knew that the days ahead would test their connection in ways neither of them could predict. But she also knew they were ready to face it, together, with trust, care, and unwavering honesty. The following week carried an unusual stillness. Emily noticed it in the way sunlight streamed through the windows, casting gentle patterns on the floor, and in the quiet rhythm of life in the house. Normally mornings were filled with chatter, hurried breakfasts, and the occasional teasing from David. But today felt different. Almost like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Emily found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, notebook open, pencil tapping softly against the paper. His brow was furrowed, and there was a distant look in his eyes. She hesitated before speaking, unsure if she should interrupt, but something in his expression told her that he needed someone to listen. "Ethan," she said gently, "are you okay?" He looked up, startled for a moment, then let out a slow sigh. I don't know," he admitted, his voice quiet but steady. "I've been trying to figure out how to handle things. Everything's changing and I keep thinking I should be okay with it, but I'm not sure I am." Emily's heart tightened. She knew exactly what he meant. Change could feel like a tidal wave, pulling you in directions you weren't ready for, forcing emotions to rise in ways you hadn't anticipated. She moved closer and took a seat beside him, careful to give him the space he needed while letting him know she was there. "You don't have to have it all figured out, Ethan," she said softly. "It's okay to feel uncertain. It's okay to feel everything at once. Life doesn't come with instructions, and sometimes the hardest part is just letting someone be there with you while you figure it out." He nodded, eyes glistening slightly, though he tried to hide it. "I guess I've been holding a lot in. I didn't want to upset anyone or make things awkward. But the more I try to keep it inside, the heavier it feels. I don't want to lose what we've built. I care about you more than I thought I could, and it scares me sometimes." Emily felt her chest tighten, her own emotions mirroring his honesty. There was a raw, undeniable intensity in his words. Not romantic in a forbidden sense, but a deep, heartfelt expression of trust and connection. She reached out, resting a hand gently on his shoulder. "Ethan," she said, her voice tender, "I feel the same. I care about you too. And not in a way that crosses any line, but in a way that matters, in a way that strengthens both of us. You've trusted me, shared your thoughts, your fears, and that means more than I can put into words. I don't want to lose this bond either." For a long moment they sat in silence, letting the weight of their honesty settle. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if recognizing the significance of this turning point. Emily could feel the trust between them deepening, solidifying into something rare and beautiful. A connection built on care, understanding, and unspoken love for one another's hearts. Then, without warning, the power went out. The lights flickered and went dark, leaving only the soft glow of the streetlights outside to illuminate the room. Emily laughed softly, the tension easing just a little, while Ethan exhaled, a small smile forming despite the unexpected disruption. Emily stared out the kitchen window, watching the soft drizzle trace lines down the glass. The steady rhythm of rain always calmed her, yet today it felt different, more like a mirror reflecting the quiet ache in her heart. She had always imagined love as something warm and comforting, a steady light in the darkness. But after the past few years, she had begun to wonder if that kind of love was ever meant for her. Ethan nodded, his hand brushing against hers for a fleeting moment. It was subtle, almost accidental, but Emily felt the significance. That small touch carried weeks of growing trust, admiration, and care. It was a gentle affirmation of their bond, a reminder that their connection had grown into something profound without ever stepping beyond the boundaries of respect, love, and family. Later, as they lit candles to bring warmth to the room, Emily felt a sense of calm and hope. She realized that this was the turning point she had been waiting for. Not a dramatic declaration or a sudden revelation, but a quiet, mutual acknowledgement of feelings that had long been simmering beneath the surface. It was a moment of truth, of honesty, and of emotional courage. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their fears, their hopes, and the small joys that often went unnoticed. Emily shared stories of her own childhood, the challenges she had faced, and the moments that had shaped her. Ethan listened intently, occasionally nodding, occasionally smiling, and occasionally pausing to reflect. It was a conversation that could have lasted for hours, yet it was perfectly complete in its intimacy and sincerity. By the time the candles burned low, Emily and Ethan had reached a new understanding. Their bond had been tested by unspoken feelings, uncertainties, and the complexity of blended family life. But in the end, they had emerged stronger, closer, and more attuned to each other's hearts. The morning sunlight streamed softly through the kitchen windows, filling the house with a gentle warmth. Emily stood by the counter sipping her coffee, listening to the faint hum of life around her. The stillness was comforting, but it also carried a quiet anticipation, the kind that comes when hearts have changed and a new chapter quietly begins. Ethan appeared in the doorway, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. His usual guarded expression was softened by a small, genuine smile, and Emily felt her heart lift. Over the past weeks, so much had shifted between them, not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet, steady ways that mattered more than words could ever convey. "Good morning," Emily said warmly. "Morning," Ethan replied, his tone light, casual, yet carrying a subtle warmth that hadn't been there before. He came closer and picked up the notebook he had been working on the night before, the one filled with sketches and stories. "I finished a few more pages," he said, eyes shining with a mix of pride and anticipation. Emily glanced at the drawings and stories, and her chest swelled with admiration. "These are amazing," she said. "You've really grown as an artist and a writer. I'm proud of you." Ethan looked down at his notebook, a small laugh escaping him. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without your support. You've always been there, even when I wasn't sure how to let you in." Emily's heart ached with emotion. Those simple words carried everything: the trust, the care, the slow-building bond they had shared over countless quiet moments. She realized how far they had come, how much they had grown together, and how precious this connection truly was. Later that afternoon, the family gathered in the living room for a casual celebration. David had brought in a small cake to mark Ethan's accomplishments at school, and everyone laughed, shared stories, and celebrated together. Emily watched Ethan interact with his father and friends, noticing the ease in his posture, the brightness in his eyes, and the quiet confidence that had blossomed in recent weeks. "I guess life has a way of reminding us that we can't control everything," Emily said, her voice calm but thoughtful. "Sometimes it throws surprises at us, and all we can do is face them together." Emily accepted it, her hands trembling slightly. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice catching. "Thank you, Ethan. I'll treasure it always." It was a small gesture, but to Emily it represented everything: the bond they had nurtured, the trust they had built, and the quiet love that had grown in the space between them. It wasn't romantic in any inappropriate sense, but it was profound, heartfelt, and enduring. As the evening drew near, Emily found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. There had been moments of uncertainty, moments when she had questioned her own feelings, and moments when she had wondered if Ethan would ever truly let her in. But now all of those fears felt distant, replaced by a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. She realized that love in all its forms was rarely simple. It could be parental, platonic, or emotional, but the most enduring kind of love was built on trust, care, and understanding. She had experienced it with Ethan in a way that enriched her life, giving her hope, joy, and a sense of belonging she had never imagined possible. Later that night, Emily found herself standing by the window, gazing at the stars above. The house was quiet, the family asleep or winding down, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had brought unexpected twists and turns, but in the end it had brought her exactly what she needed: connection, trust, and a bond that would last a lifetime. Ethan's footsteps approached, soft and deliberate. He paused beside her, looking up at the sky with her. "It's beautiful tonight," he said quietly. Emily nodded, smiling. "It is. Sometimes the quiet moments are the ones that matter the most." They stood together for a while, sharing the silence, sharing the calm, sharing the understanding that life had shaped their relationship in subtle, powerful ways. Emily felt a sense of hope, a sense of possibility, and a sense of fulfillment. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family, as a unit, and as people who had learned the value of patience, trust, and care. Resolution. Emily realized that the love she felt for Ethan wasn't about passion or desire. It was about presence, guidance, and emotional connection. It was the kind of love that could endure, the kind that made a house feel like home, and the kind that could carry them through life's challenges with grace and understanding. She felt her heart expand with gratitude, knowing that they had created something rare, beautiful, and enduring. As she turned back to the warmth of the living room, Emily caught Ethan's glance. There was a silent acknowledgement in his eyes, a promise of trust and care that needed no words. In that moment, everything felt right. Life had shifted, hearts had opened, and a new chapter had begun. One filled with hope, love, and the quiet certainty that some bonds, once nurtured, could last forever. Her life had been full of change. Moving to a new city, leaving behind old friends, starting a new job. And now marrying David had opened a door she wasn't sure she was ready to step through. David was kind, gentle, and patient in a way that made her feel safe. But his son Ethan remained an enigma she couldn't quite decipher. During a brief lull, Ethan came and sat beside Emily on the sofa. He handed her a small sketch he had done, a portrait of the three of them, smiling together. "I wanted you to have this," he said softly.